Hi, my name is Matthew Hughes, and I would like to welcome you all to CobbleStone Software's Virtual User Conference. I want to thank you all for taking the time today to join Breakout Session 3, which is a demo of managing bids and eProcurement with CobbleStone's Contract Insight Enterprise Edition. Today, we're going to be talking about two different add-on modules that CobbleStone offers to enhance the existing contract lifecycle management functionality. And you're going to learn a lot about how CobbleStone's eProcurement and solicitation modules enhance contract insight overall, providing bid automation, drafting, vendor collaboration, ratings and scorecards, vendor awards, and even more. I want to start off today's session by making sure that everybody can see my screen. And if there are any questions throughout the demonstration, you are going to be able to send me those questions via the chat box. Now, as I mentioned, what we're going to be focused on for today is actually two different modules that CobbleStone offers. The first module that we're going to focus on is CobbleStone's Solicitation and Bid Management module, which allows your organizations to track and manage the entire bid and solicitation process. Additionally, we are also going to be talking today about CobbleStone's Vendor-Client Collaboration Gateway, which provides a self-service portal to vendors, suppliers, customers, clients, and more, and allows them to participate in the bid and solicitation process. You're going to be seeing a little bit of each module as we go through today. So I will do my best to make sure everything is clear on what we are seeing. The screen that you are currently looking at here is a dashboard page. For those of you who are users of the system, you should be familiar with the dashboard capability to give your users a personalized homepage. The good news is all of the contract management dashboards that your team is likely already taking advantage of are also available for bids and solicitations. As you can see, there is a bid overview dashboard that's showing here. And this is actually a dashboard that is provided out of the box. It's going to pull together certain key details about the various bids that are set up in your system. However, these dashboards are configurable. So if you would like to take this out-of-the-box dashboard and change certain details on here or reporting information that's being shown, you absolutely can. You also have the ability to create your own dashboards. So if you prefer to build a dashboard page and set it up with the bid information you would like to see, that is also an option for your team. The focus of today, again, is not on dashboards necessarily. So we're going to keep moving right past this dashboard page. But if you have questions on that, please let me know. What I want to start with today is the first module that I mentioned, CobbleStone's Solicitation and Bid Management module. A lot of the features that we are going to talk about today are features that you likely already are taking advantage of with the contract management application. The same ability to configure and personalize the system and really mold it to meet your organization's specific needs, that all applies to this module as well. And just like the contract management module, anytime you are interested in setting up a new bid or solicitation, the first step is always going to be the creation of a bid record. In your system, to create a new bid record, you would be able to go to the Procurement menu up on the top navigation menu. And underneath of that, you will see a menu for eSourcing. Here, you'll find menu options to add or create a new solicitation record, find or search the existing solicitations in the system, as well as view any solicitation task alerts that are currently past due. We'll talk a little bit about those task alerts today. And the two menu items above here are things that you likely are going to utilize very, very often. For now, what we're going to focus on here is adding a solicitation record. And for those who are familiar with adding a contract into Contract Insight, it's going to look very familiar. The first thing that users are going to be asked to do when they create a new solicitation is they're going to be asked to select a type. Just like your contract type list, the system allows authorized users to configure unlimited bid or solicitation types that your team engages in. Some of the examples here, these are provided out of the box. However, if you want to change the names of these types as well as create your own, that is available to you, and those changes can be made right through the user interface. Once that type is selected, though, the user is going to go ahead and hit continue, and it's going to bring them to the add screen. And once again, very similar to your contracts, when you are creating a solicitation record, there is going to be information that you are going to need to fill out. These entry screens are configurable. The software includes out-of-the-box fields for solicitation records. Many of them here on the screen are included as examples. However, if you would like to create or add new fields or make changes to the out-of-the-box fields, you can do that. You can actually create unlimited fields directly through the Field Manager area, and that does not require IT or CobbleStone intervention to do so. Now, in terms of creating this record, it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is fill out the information about that solicitation that you are going to be creating and go ahead and hit save and continue. However, there are certain fields here that are important. Just like your contract records, certain fields are there for tracking purposes, whereas other fields tie into certain features and functionality that our software has to offer. One example is the bid type. The drop-down that we just talked about, where you're able to set up those types of bids and solicitations. The type is important as it usually will tie into the fields we've talked about. You are able to actually assign fields by bid type. So if you want to capture information that is different depending on the type that is selected by your users, you can do that. You also have fields that are similar to fields on the contract record, like the employee contact, as well as the department or business unit that is assigned to that record. Those things will tie into the notifications that are going out to your users, as well as permissioning, where you're able to limit user access to areas of the system and different records based on whether they are assigned to that record and or their department is assigned to that record. You also have a field here called invitation type. You'll see if I click here on this dropdown, I have a few options. I have a not published option, I have a public option, and an invite only. This invite type is really going to determine how vendors and suppliers are able to register and interact with this bid. If it's a public bid, that allows any vendor or supplier that is registered with your organization through our vendor client collaboration gateway to view this solicitation and choose to participate. Alternatively, you can also make this an invitation-only bid, where you can actually go through your list of registered and approved vendors and suppliers and determine, which of those entities you are going to invite to participate. We also offer line item bidding and reverse auction bidding. So if that is something your team is interested in, that capability is here, and you can determine right off the bat whether this particular bid is going to be a reverse auction bid. You'll also see key date fields. These fields, just like your contract date fields, are going to provide notifications to the internal stakeholders that are assigned to this particular record. So they'll receive alerts for the question's due date, the bid close date, as well as the response view open date. However, these date fields are not just here for notifications purposes. They also tie into our vendor gateway, where participating vendors are going to be limited on what they can do and how they're able to participate, depending on how you set the dates up. For example, vendors are able to submit questions electronically through that gateway, but if the question's due date and time has arrived and passed, that section of the bid is locked down. It will no longer accept additional questions through our portal. The same logic applies to the bid close date. Once you hit that date and time, the record for that solicitation becomes view only, and vendors are no longer able to submit additional information. We do also offer a response view open date. Many organizations have rules in place that they are not able to start reviewing vendor responses until all responses have been received or you've hit that close date. Usually it's in an effort to promote fairness and remove any bias towards one vendor or another. This really is going to provide that capability. If you specify a date and time here, the system will actually hide the documents and pricing and information that is being submitted by your vendors until that date and time has arrived. Once that does happen, that information is available and you're able to go ahead and interact with it. You will also see some additional fields down here looking at projected contract data. These fields are not quite important right off the bat, but usually clients will like to capture certain details on the contract that they anticipate they will be awarding off of this particular bid if it is awarded. Now, for the sake of time today, I have set up a bid record for us already. So I'm going to move away from our sourcing ad page, close that out, and what you'll see now is an RFP record for an eProcurement solution. All of those fields have been filled out and completed by me, with a couple exceptions for things that I'm not going to be utilizing for today. This particular RFP is an invitation-only bid. So what I have done is I have invited specific vendors and suppliers from our list. You are able to do that here. You can access that area on the left-hand toolbar where you can go ahead and assign respondents from the ones that you've set up. If we start to scroll down past our field information, again, some of these features that your team is likely already familiar with are going to also apply to this module. So if you need to be able to edit fields, there's little edit options here by individual fields or by field group. But moving down past that information, you're also going to have some key tables. One area is the bid rating weights. One of the features we offer with this as you start to go into the evaluation process is a ratings and scorecard feature. It allows your team to set up ratings categories for your bids and then evaluate the vendor proposals based on those different categories. We also have the ability to set up weights for that scoring, so that if certain categories are more important in how you are evaluating that scoring, you can factor that in, and our system will actually auto-calculate a weighted score based on the weights that you've assigned. You'll see for today, I have a few different weights set up for 4 different categories. We have pricing, technical, quality, and references. Those weights are in that order, with pricing being the highest weight at 0.4 or 40%, and then it goes down from there, 30%, 20%, and 10%. This will factor in as we start to move through the system today, so please bear with me. You will also see a couple other tables as well. We have a table called Change Notification Emails. This is a table that allows you to set up contacts on this particular record where if changes are made, the system can send notifications via email to those contacts, letting them know that something has been updated or something's been added, and that they might need to be aware of it or even potentially review or take action on it. Additionally, you are able to assign product and service codes. This is something that not everybody is likely to take advantage of, but for clients that do need this type of capability, you are able to track this information both for your vendors and suppliers, as well as the individual bids that you're putting out. And the advantage there's actually a few. When you are assigning respondents, you're choosing who you would like to invite to participate in this bid. You are able to go through your vendor list and say, only show me vendors that offer, these product and service codes. You can also, the system can also provide notifications, alerting of applicable vendors to solicitations they might be interested in responding to based on the products and services that they're offering. Again, this is something that not everyone's going to take advantage of, but for those who do need this, it's here and you can take advantage of it. Now, below our field information, just like our contract records again, we have our files and attachments area. This allows the internal stakeholders who are working on this RFP to upload and store documents. However, there are some key differences between the attachments here on our solicitation versus attachments that you might see on a contract. This area is likely going to include not only documents that your team is uploading here, but also documents that are being submitted to you by the participating vendors. You'll see in my system, I've gone ahead and I've set up some folders where I have an RFP documents folder, which is intended to be any of our published RFP documents and the ones that will be accessible to the participating vendors, as well as folders for the participating vendor documents. I have one for ABC vendor, CobbleStone Systems, and XYZ vendor. All three are assigned to participate and have submitted documents as part of their response. I also have an internal documents folder, so if there are attachments that you do want to store here, but maybe you don't want to expose to the participants, that's perfectly fine. You'll see if I click on that internal documents folder, I have a draft of our RFP that we created, and it's the PDF version of that is stored in the top folder and available for the participants. When you do upload these attachments yourself internally, you have a few different things that you can do with them. You can add detailed notes and descriptions. You can add categories from a configurable drop-down list of categories. You can assign document types if that's something you would like to capture about each. You can even upload from your computer or shared drive. You can drag and drop documents in, as well as you can connect a Google Drive and or a OneDrive account with your CobbleStone account and bring documents in from that particular cloud drive. You will see an option here that says is public. That is a very important field when you look at these bid documents, because that field is going to determine whether or not that document is accessible to your vendors. If I say no, that document is kept internal, but if I say yes, those participants can view and interact with that file if they need to. Now, we'll come back to this capability in just a few minutes because there's something that ties into this that is potentially very important for some of you. One of the key features our software offers, not just for contracts, is, or rather are document templates. Your team would be able to set up unlimited document templates associated with bids and solicitations. That could be templates for the RFP itself, It could be award letters, non-award letters. It could be amendments or addendums that you want to use a standardized form document for. It doesn't really matter. Any type of document that you need, you can set that up as a template so that you can quickly and easily draft the document that you want. You'll see for our demo today, I have actually drafted a template for us. This is my request for proposal template. It's something that I actually set up for the presentation today. And just like the contract templates that you are likely taking advantage of, the setup of this template or the setup of this document is really, really easy because not only am I drafting our standard document, what I want the system to do is also populate that document with information and clauses and different details that I have already provided to the system in the form of my data fields. You'll notice here on the screen, I'm pulling over this exact template. For the most part, this is going to look like a normal document. The key difference is you'll notice that we have what we call mergeable placeholders set up, so that when this document does get drafted, those placeholders are telling the system what field information should be pulled into that document and populated. So on our cover page, for example, we have our bid open release date. That's going to be brought in along with the bid close date. If we scroll down a little bit further into our template, I also have primary contact details setting up or set up here, including the first name, last name, title, email address, and phone number of that contact. You'll see I also include details here under our process schedule, including additional dates, as well as some other details throughout this file. Your team will not have to worry about creating these placeholders. When you set your template up, you are able to literally go ahead and just pick the fields you would like to use, and it will give you the corresponding placeholder to use. And all you need to do is just copy and paste that placeholder into your Word template wherever you want to use it. Now, if we go ahead and we take a look at our document here, you'll notice this is the document that I drafted. I drafted it and attached it here to our attachments section. If we look at the preview of this document, it's going to be the exact same file that we were looking at, but the difference is it doesn't have any placeholders. It's been replaced by the field values that I had keyed in for this record, and it removed those placeholders. So again, we have our release date and our response due date. If we go ahead to our third page, it also pulled in primary contact details, as well as our key dates and other information throughout. Now, once the template has been drafted, that doesn't necessarily mean you're done with it. Oftentimes our clients will utilize the system to route their solicitations for review and approval. There's often a collaboration process that's involved where it's sent to different people or people are invited to review it, make changes, add details until such time that document is ready and you're ready to release this to the participating vendors. The good news is all of the workflow and document collaboration capability that you are used to with our contract management module, that is available here with our system as well. You'll see a task, email, and workflow alerts area that allows you to set up those task alerts, inviting people in to participate in that setup and collaboration on a document. The task area here does allow you to create one-off tasks. As you can see, there is a add task button here that lets you go ahead and do that. You'll see I've created a couple tasks for us today, including a future dated task to review vendor questions, as well as a future dated task to review our vendor proposals that were submitted to us. If you would like to automate these alerts, going back into the discussion around workflow, that is absolutely something that you can do. The workflow capability allows you to set up rule-based workflow processes that are going to route your documents through the processes that you need. Please go ahead and ignore any alerts that are popping up on my screen. The workflow process that you're able to set up can mirror the exact process that you follow, and you can factor in any of the field details that you're capturing about that bid. The bid process, potentially could vary depending on whether it's a request for proposal versus a request for information. It could vary depending on the budget that you've allocated for a particular project. It could factor in other details that your team is capturing with user-defined fields. Any field in the system can be utilized to automate your workflow process and ensure before you do send this document out for vendors, it's been reviewed, approved, and finalized. Now, we might come back to this task area in just a little bit, but there are some other areas here as well that might be interesting. We have a notes and comments section that allows stakeholders internally to add detailed notes and comments related to this particular engagement. You'll see a subject line as well as a body here for your messaging. You'll also see a pricing line item table. This is one of the two different ways that you can capture, actually 3 different ways, I apologize, that allows you to capture pricing information. And pricing information, as I noted, can be captured in different ways depending on what your preferences are. We have a pricing line item table where you can import pricing details that were submitted to you by the participating vendors. You can also utilize our questionnaire feature, which I will walk you through momentarily, to capture those pricing details. You could also just capture pricing details via documents. We see that often where clients have a pricing sheet, they have vendors fill that sheet out, and they save and attach that sheet as one of their attached proposal files. Ultimately, whatever your team is most comfortable with, you can take advantage of it in the way that you would like. You will also see a section here right below that called Questions and Answers. This is pretty straightforward. It's kind of in the name what that is. But this is the section where questions are going to be found that have been submitted to you by the participants. Any questions that are submitted, if you want, can provide notifications to the assigned stakeholders on this record, letting you know that a new question was submitted by that team. And it gives you an opportunity to review those questions and respond to them. You could go in and give each question a detailed response. You can also choose to make that question a public question, so that if a participating vendor needs to take a look at a particular question, you can also allow everybody who's participating to see what question was asked and the response that you gave them. These questions can also be exported and or sent via email. We know often clients will want to incorporate questions and responses into a bid addendum. That is something you can also do with our system. You could pull this into the format you want and then just add it as part of an addendum document that you're distributing and posting for those participants. I will be showing you all of these things today from the vendor perspective, but just for now, I'm focusing more on what the internal stakeholders are seeing and doing. Below the Q&A section, we have a ratings and scorecard section. This area, it can be very, very important depending on how your team likes to evaluate proposals. As I mentioned earlier, the rating and scorecard feature allows your team to set up different ratings categories on how you're going to evaluate a vendor participant. Um, and when you go ahead and submit those submit your scorecards, you're able to pick the rating category. You're able to score them against a specified target score. And if you are utilizing our weighted scoring option, which I went through earlier, as I said, the system is going to automatically calculate a weighted score based on your submission. And what you'll see here, I have some sample scorecards set up for us where I've gone ahead and rated each of the participating vendors on each of the different categories. You'll see ratings for each category: pricing, technical, references, and quality. And here we have in the first column the actual weighted score. So each one, the first two are 1.20, and then we have a 0.5 and a 0.80 score. Ultimately, the target score for my scoring is a total of 5. And based on our weighted scoring, this vendor, ABC vendor, has scored a 3.7 out of 5. If we scroll down and we take a look, we can see a comparison to how our other vendors scored. We have a CobbleStone system scorecard in here where they went ahead and scored a 5 out of 5. And down below, we have XYZ vendor. They scored a 3.1 out of 5. Now, this does not have to be the only determining factor on whether you're going to award a bid to a particular vendor, but it can be a really useful tool in determining, who scored best based on the criteria that we outlined. It's meant as a tool to help inform your decision and help you make the best decision possible. You can have really any authorized users submit these scorecards, and you can have multiple people submit their own scorecards, so you can see a comparison of how they scored from different user perspectives. If we scroll down, there's just a couple other, or really just one other area to mention for today, which is the interested and assigned respondents. I showed you earlier how you can access your respondent list from the side toolbar, but you also have this table down here where you can add additional vendors to this particular bid and notify them. But you'll see from my list, these are the 3 that are currently participating: ABC vendor, CobbleStone Systems, and XYZ vendor, the 3 that I had submitted scorecards for. You'll also see there is a response indication or a status that tells us kind of where that vendor currently is at. Have they finalized and fully submitted their bid, or are they not quite done yet? Are they doing something else? This will give you an idea of where in their process the vendor is with regards to your solicitation. Now, everything I've showed you so far, again, has been from the vendor, or rather the internal stakeholder perspective. There is one other key area that I want to show you and talk a little bit about before we talk about what the vendor is seeing, how those vendors are registering with your team, and how they are able to go ahead and participate. The one area I want to show you before we go ahead and do that is our surveys and questionnaires feature. This is something that is available, with our tool, and it allows you to set up online questionnaires. Very often we see our clients, as well as people we don't work with, when they're putting out RFPs for a software solution. They're often putting together questionnaires in the form of Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word even, and the vendor's responsibility is to respond to those things and then send them that completed questionnaire. What this feature is going to allow you to do is really remove the need to create an external document. Instead, it lets you set up a questionnaire online that the vendors are able to respond to through our portal. Not only does it let you, let the vendors participate here, it allows you to also track and manage the status of each participating vendor, whether they've gone ahead and actually reviewed that. It allows you to go ahead and take a look at the actual responses. When you look at the details of this survey, again, I will show you what the vendor sees for this particular item. But what the internal folks are going to see, they're going to see the number of participants that have been assigned, the number that have completed their survey or questionnaire, and it gives you the ability to go ahead and review the results of that survey. And when we take a look at this results page, it really gives you a nice comparison for each question that you've set up and broken down into different sections. You'll see each question and each vendor response, and you have a nice easy comparison here where I see each of the responses for each question. And as we scroll down, we can start to take a look and see how each vendor compares on their responses. If we go ahead and we look at a different section, this is my company information section. I also have a document authoring section set up where the vendors are responding to individual functional requirements around document templates and authoring. You'll notice these are actually drop downs where they selected between one of 5 choices to indicate whether their tool meets the particular need that was outlined for them. You'll actually see each of their responses. And what you'll notice here that something I didn't mention on the last screen was scoring. I showed you already how you can use our rating scorecard feature to go ahead and evaluate your vendor responses. You can actually have automated scoring for your questionnaire responses, where you set up different choices they have to respond with, and based on that response, it assigns a score. And you could see how each person, or rather how each vendor scored across all the different questions that you asked them. If you want to see individualized reports, there's a little drop down here at the top where I can see, just show me CobbleStone question responses, for example. That concatenates everything and puts it into just the CobbleStone answers. We also can generate a bid tabulations. You'll notice there is a pricing section here. I have vendors actually submitting pricing details for me on this particular item. But if I want to see a bid tabulation report for this, I can see how each of these vendors priced each of the different items on this bid. You can also, if it's something your team needs, there is a down selection option where you can down select certain vendors from a particular survey or questionnaire and then assign them to a follow-up questionnaire where you might determine that you want to down select from 10 vendors down to 3. You can select those 3 vendors and give them additional questions that they can respond to further evaluate and hopefully make a decision. Now, these answers are also exportable out to Microsoft Excel if you would like to take it out to that format, but it's really not necessary. The system lets you review and take a look at this information without having to pull it out of CobbleStone. Now, once again, everything I've showed you so far today has been primarily focused on what your team would be doing, how internal stakeholders are able to, set up a solicitation, draft solicitations, collaborate on it, and then publish those documents to gather proposals from your vendors. What I want to also talk about today is the vendor interaction. What are vendors seeing? How did they register and interact with this portal? And how do they interact specifically with a particular bid? And for that, I'm going to shift away from our eProcurement module here and talk again about the vendor-client collaboration gateway. This is a separate portal that once again allows the vendor to interact with your team. And the nice thing with this module is it actually allows them to potentially interact with not just bids, You can also publish contracts that you have to this portal. There are public options as well as options where the vendors that are assigned can always interact with and view the contracts that they have with your organization. You can also allow them to interact with their company profile. If there are vendor updates that need to be applied, they need to submit documentation like W-9s and insurance certificates. If they have updates they need to apply, their primary contact leaves the organization and they want to add a new contact and set them up. This portal allows them to do that, and really with the goal of taking some of that responsibility off the shoulders of your internal users. However, the primary focus for today is the bid interaction. And if I am a particular a vendor who's going to need to participate, I might even have received an email message that was sent out. You can send email alerts or email messages out to your respondents to alert them to a particular bid. What they would do is they would be brought here to the Contract Insight Gateway. Now, if they already are a user, or rather they already have an account set up, login should be very, very easy for them. They go ahead and they put in their username and their password. They put in their company ID, which will be provided to them upon their initial sign up, and they'll check off the terms and conditions box and hit that login button. If they are a new vendor, say you made this a public solicitation and a new vendor wants to register with your team, you can create online registration forms where they fill out details about who they are as a vendor. They can provide documentation and details that you need, and if you want, you can set it up in a way that they need to be approved before they can go ahead and actually participate in anything. You don't necessarily need to allow every vendor to participate, unless you are a public organization. You can kind of control that based on your policies and procedures. But what I'm going to do is log in here as a contact with CobbleStone Software or CobbleStone Systems, one of our participating vendors. I am logged in today as Jack Smith, that is the CobbleStone user. And when Jack gets out here, he's going to have access to a bunch of different menus. Again, some of these things are not applicable for what we're going to talk about today, and you are able to hide the menu items that you don't want them to see or interact with. Some of these might not even be applicable to how you would ultimately use the system. For example, if you don't have our purchase order management module, this area likely isn't going to show up, or you'd want to hide it, so they don't see it. But in terms of interacting with their solicitations, there are some different options here. The solicitation menu gives them an option to view their solicitations. These are solicitations that they have been invited to or registered as a participant for. They can view all solicitations, and that will include anything they've been invited to, as well as any public solicitation that maybe they have not. We specifically also offer a public solicitation search, so they can look for anything that is only marked as public. They can even view upcoming solicitations where we haven't quite hit the open date for it, but things that you do plan on releasing at a future date. Now, I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to go to the My Solicitations menu. And this is going to go ahead and give you a search screen or a list screen that will show you those solicitations. You'll see some details here listed out about this particular bid, and the information that is showing on the search screen, like you see here, as well as the record screen. If I open this page up, ultimately that is up to your team. You can choose what field information is showing, what field information is not. But regardless, as long as you do use the date and time features we've talked about, it will always show the bid open release date, the questions due date, and the bid close date here. It will also give the vendor contacts a countdown, including days, hours, minutes, and seconds until it hits that close date and time. They can even add these dates and times to their calendar if they want. Each of these buttons you can click on, and it creates a calendar invitation that they can add to, say, their Outlook calendar so they don't forget something. Right below the key dates that they should be aware of right off the top, we have some details. These are just field details from the bid record that I have chosen to publish and allow vendors to actually see. And right below that, we have our survey and questionnaire section. And again, we kind of talked about this from the internal perspective, but from the vendor side, if they are assigned to a survey or they're given something they need to respond to, it's really, really easy to do that. What they would do is they would click here on the Manage and Respond option. And I have already completed this for today, so it's going to give me a welcome back message, but it normally will give you a kind of initial welcome message. And both those messages are configurable. When I click the Start or Resume Survey button, it's going to then bring me into the survey itself. And I have a drop-down where I can move between different sections of that questionnaire. And very simply, I'm going to go ahead and respond to each of the questions that have been given to me. You'll see I do have responses in here for everything. So I've filled out my company details. And you'll see text boxes. You'll see some drop-downs. And then the bigger section here, where we looked at some of the automated scoring, these are just drop-downs. Like I said, we set up the questions and each of the different choices that they would have. And they're able to go ahead and essentially say, does this requirement, or rather, is this requirement met with our tool, or is it not? And you'll see CobbleStone is going to score very well. We've said meets and exceeds for everything in this section. And if we go to the final section, this is where we get to that pricing information. The pricing details that have been submitted, we kind of looked at it again from the internal side. I can always go in and edit these pricing line items if I need to. If I wanted to change anything, I can hit that edit button, and I'll see my item number or description, the quantity, the unit of measure, and the unit price. The total amount does have a value in here, but this is not something they will fill out themselves. What the system will do for them is it will take the quantity times the unit price, and then it will create a total, while also factoring in discount amounts and discount volumes that they might specify. And that's editing. I can also remove something from here, as well as add new line items to continue to add to that pricing. Once they're done, you might have more sections than this, but again, it's very easy to set these up. They would hit submit, and they would just sign off on that, just saying, this is complete, and they're finished. Now, the due date on a particular survey, usually that is lined up with the bid close date. And once you hit that bid close date, again, this record is going to become or rather view only. They won't be able to submit further responses to the questionnaire, as well as do some of the other things we're going to talk about here in just a second. Now, in addition to the questionnaire, there's going to be two different files and attachments section. The first is the public file section. So these are the documents that have been posted by your team throughout the bid process that you wanted to give to these vendors. It could be the RFP document itself. It could be exhibits, could be addendums and amendments that you've put out there. It really doesn't matter. Any document you publish and say you want available through this portal, the participants will be able to view this and download this document and potentially save locally if they need to. The vendor will also have a section for My Files. So these are the documents that are actually being submitted by the vendor themselves. And it's really simple. They have a file explorer here that lets them grab the document from their shared drive or computer. It lets them put in categories if you want to set up categories that are available to pick from. And they can add a description. And once they do, they save that document. And what you'll notice is not only does it show the file they submitted, but in the description that they keyed in, the system will automatically identify the vendor contact and the vendor name of who submitted that file. So when I look at this again, I'm going to bounce over to the internal record. If we look at our attachment section and I go to my CobbleStone folder, I don't need to figure out which documents were submitted by a vendor. The system tells me that right off the bat. It'll be here in the description. It will automatically identify this as a vendor response document, and it will automatically assign the respondent name here. And that's what allows me to quickly say, this is a CobbleStone document, and I moved it into the CobbleStone folder that's been set up. Anytime you talk about attachments, it is unlimited documents per record. So you can have as many attachments as you need uploaded, and vendors can upload as many as they need as part of their proposals. Now, below the files and attachments section, we have our Q&A section. So again, we kind of looked at this from the internal perspective, but once again, there's two Q&A sections. There's the public Q&A and there's the My Q&A. So the public Q&A are the questions that have been asked by any of the participants, and your team has gone ahead and responded and said, yes, I want this available for everybody. And when that happens, every vendor will now be able to see the question that was asked, the response, as well as the date that was submitted by the participating vendor. Below that, we have the My Q&A section, where you have a rich text editor here that lets you key in a question that you would like to ask or the vendor would like to ask. And any question that they ask is going to then be listed down here below. And you'll notice I have this question asked, and it's also a public question. So again, public showing not only the questions that I asked as this vendor, but also the other questions from other people as well. Once again, down below, we have a response status section. I had updated this to bid is finalized and fully submitted, but this just allows the vendor to indicate, if they get invited to something, are they interested in responding? Are they not interested? Are they withdrawing a response they may have previously submitted? Or, once again, is the bid finalized and submitted fully? And that's really it. We try to keep it as simple as possible for the participating vendors. We do have some links on the left-hand side where they can export all of their files and public files, as well as the public Q&A and their own Q&A. But most of the time, they don't need to worry about that. That's something that they can just download those documents as needed. Now, going back into the internal side of this, ultimately, the goal of a bid or a solicitation is to potentially award a contract. And again, everything we've talked about today is part of that solicitation and bid module. But any module that CobbleStone offers is either designed to enhance the existing contract management functionality or extend the contract lifecycle and then tie that lifecycle into the contract process itself. So when you are managing these bids, you are able to tie this directly into the contract process. And you'll notice there are some fields here that I briefly referenced earlier as things that we weren't going to really talk about. These are fields that I've grouped as projected contract data. And some of those fields I did fill out when I created this, including projected start and end date for the contract itself, the contract type that we're going to be awarding, the department and the employee point of contact that should be assigned to it, as well as the initial status of that contract, when it gets created. I have some additional fields here where I am able to, at the time of award, I'm able to identify exactly who we are awarding, what the award amount is, and what the award date is. So today I'm going to award CobbleStone Systems here based on our scoring. They did score a 5 out of 5, and therefore that's who we're going to work with here. I'm going to put in the awarded vendor. I'm going to put in the award amount based on their pricing, and I'm going to then put in the award date as 11/5, and I'm going to save that information. That is really important because if you look at the left-hand toolbar, amongst the many different menu options that you have, there is a section here called Create from Sourcing. This allows you to create a new record from the existing solicitation. And for example, you can link this to an existing contract if you want, but it allows you to create the contract that you're going to then be negotiating with this vendor. And when I actually hit this Add Contract button, not only does it bring me to the Add Contract screen, but it's going to also bring you into that screen with some of the information already populated for you. A lot of those data fields that I referenced on the previous screen are also fields that we're going to be capturing on the contract. And that's part of why I have it there, because I want that information to carry over and map to the corresponding contract fields. So for example, the awarded vendor, CobbleStone Systems, the assigned employee and department, the status. If we scroll down, the effective and expiration date, as well as the contract and budget amounts. I did pull in the title as well, which your team might not do. You might edit that, for example. You don't have to always keep the same information from what's mapped over. But really from here, this is where you're going to go ahead and set up the contract that you're going to be negotiating. This is where it connects from the sourcing side of the process directly into the contract side. Because if I go ahead and fill this out, if you bear with me here for just 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. This is going to create the contract record, which then leads into the contract workflow process. But most importantly, the two records that we just looked at, the solicitation that this contract was awarded from, as well as the contract itself, those two things are now linked together. So if we scroll down on our contract page, there's going to be a linked section that will always show any solicitation that this contract was awarded from. So that there's always that relationship between the two. And there's also not only a summary of that solicitation, but a link. So if I want to go from solicitation, or rather contract to solicitation, I have that view link that brings me back into this page. And that link should also be bi-directional, where you can easily go from solicitation over to the awarded contract. Now, that's everything that I wanted to cover today. There's a lot of little details in here that our software has to offer. Unfortunately, it's a tool that we could talk about for hours at a time, and we don't have hours today. So I'm gonna open the floor here at this point for questions. Again, you could submit those questions to us via the chat box, and I'm happy to respond. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you learned a lot.